From out of the lab and into the gym, it's the Coach Me Plus Applied Sports Science Podcast.
Hello, everybody. This is episode number 6 of the Coach Me Plus podcast. Today we have Coach Devan McConnell, the head of sports performance from UMass Lowell, the Riverhawks. Got into some really good conversations today about his off-season and in-season training, what he does with his hockey team and his field hockey team. Touched a little bit on the Olympics, and we'll call back to SIVAS and the show over this summer. Few housekeeping notes. You can follow him at DMcConnell29 on Twitter, and he also gave his email address in there as well, so you can reach out to him. And of course, for us, if you want to subscribe to the podcast, just use your app, whatever, iTunes or Stitcher or whatever it is that you're using. Or you can go to CoachMePlus.com and click the subscribe link up at the top right corner. You can also get access to the Coach Me Plus Applied Sports Science newsletter, which basically gives out tons of information every week, things like white papers and the latest in applied sports science. So without further ado, Coach Devan McConnell. All right, so we got Coach Devan McConnell here on the podcast. He's the head sports performance coach from UMass Lowell, the Riverhawks. How you doing? I'm
good, man. How are you doing?
Good, really good. So I don't know if have you heard any of the podcasts that we've done?
Oh yeah.
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 Cool.
I try to stay very up to date. Good stuff.
Yeah. It's interesting because there's a bunch of podcasts that are out there, and I think my favorite's the Rob Pacey stuff.
Yeah.
He does a really good job, and but some of the other guys that have been doing it for a while, you get into a coach coming on board, and it's like, well, give me your resume. Spend 20 minutes about how you got started in the industry. Give me your full CV, and then we'll maybe get into the meat and grind of actually doing stuff. So I like to just bypass all that. If anybody wants to know who you are, obviously they can look you up and look at your LinkedIn profile.
There you go, easy piece of cake.
Yeah. So we were kind of chatting before this. You said that you're basically wrapped up with your summer blocks right now, right?
Yeah. Well, so I have basically 2 primary teams. Ice hockey, we just finished up. That's our big sport here at UMass Lowell. We just finished up our summer block. They're home for 2 weeks. And I have field hockey, who just started last week, their preseason. So ice hockey's done for a little bit. Catch my breath from that, but field hockey's kind of up and rolling now, so getting right back into it.
So when you're dealing with you got women's sport and men's sport, they both have the word hockey in it, but they're not similar at all for anybody who's
right.
But like how are you like let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. How are you programming for the blocks, for the athletes, and for the different sports? Is it pretty generic, or are you breaking it up and giving them sport-specific programming?
Yeah, so I'm I guess I'd consider myself more of a generalist.
Mm-hmm.
So most of what I'm going to do with everybody that I train or ever have kind of trained, from a philosophical standpoint at least, is going to be pretty similar.
Sure.
90% of what I do with field hockey is sort of the same template, the same thought process as what I do with ice hockey. I'm with ice hockey 24/7, basically 12 months a year here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very dedicated position. Right now we're in the hockey arena. We have our own facility, the whole deal, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
So I'm more specific with them. I break the team up into right now 3 different groups and slightly different training emphasis per group, whereas field hockey a lot more general for a couple reasons. One, I'm not with them as much. I'm much more traditional, sort of I see you twice a week, 3 times a week in the weight room kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And from a training age standpoint, the ice hockey players typically come in. We tend to get older players, so we get kids that are 19 or 20 coming out of junior, who usually have at least some sort of training background.
Mm-hmm.
So their training age is further ahead than the field hockey kids we get that are traditional 17, 18-year-old freshmen, and a lot of them have not done a whole lot of structured strength and conditioning work. So it's a lot more general with field hockey. It's still general in a sense with ice hockey, but I do get a little bit more detailed with them as they kind of progress through their career.
Yeah, I was kind of lucky enough with Coach McKenney to be in your facility when you had the hockey guys in, and you've got all the guys on the racks. They're all they're following your workout pattern. They're going through their program and everything else like that, and you're actually there to watch them, make sure you got your spot checks and safety checks, but you're actually looking at form and everything else like that, which is hands-on and works well for you. But if you got the field hockey team and you're going with more of a lower training age program, how are you checking on them to understand like where they are, if they're getting better, are they getting stronger, are they getting faster, are they actually using correct form, like all the things that you want to do as a coach and you want to be hands-on with, but you're not actually able to do as much hands-on with. So how are you checking with the field hockey team?
Yeah, well, I mean, all their training is with me. I'm just, with ice hockey, like I'm at practice, I'm on the road with the team. With field hockey, when it comes to technique and form and things like that, I mean, we're very structured in how we train, and everything is very progression and regression based. Mm-hmm. So, I whether it be squat pattern, everybody's going to start with a certain tool to develop the squat pattern, and we're going to progress or regress based on competency. And then from sort of a development monitoring standpoint, I mean, we're going to do all the stuff that all the other strength coaches are going to do. We're going to do strength testing to be able to evaluate development there. We're going to do vertical jump and 10-yard speed to be able to monitor change and track change over time with that stuff. So those are the ways that we kind of try to quantify what we're doing with the field hockey program.
So then how often do you actually get to see the team?
So in the preseason, which is what we're at right now, we lift twice a week.
Okay.
And then we usually do most of their games are Friday, Sunday, okay, at least this season. So typically Thursday we'll do sort of a recovery regen session after their practice. Mm-hmm. So I'll see them then. And then the way our campus is set up, we're an urban campus, and we're actually split into three pieces sort of across the city a little bit.
Yep.
So where I am in the ice hockey weight room is sort of across the bridge and around town from where field hockey is. So I try to get over there to practice when time allows and just be able to see them, and if I can jump in and run a warm-up or just to watch how they move and see how they're doing. But that's kind of the nuts and bolts of how it works.
Got it. Yeah, because I mean, for a lot of coaches, they might be getting into the space for the first time, and it's like, okay, I'm expecting that I'm actually going to be looking at somebody while they're doing a squat and actually be able to give them verbal cues and all this other stuff. But chances are that you're going to be doing a lot more remote coaching in a setting like yours, right?
No, it's still not going to be remote coaching, because when we are going to schedule team lifts,
okay,
I'll be there with the team. So okay, they're never training in the weight room without me. It's just that I'm not going to be necessarily present for practice and on the road and things like that.
Okay, got it. Cool. Yeah, it's a question that we get a lot is, can I, if I'm not with my athlete, how do I actually deal with it?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing was like during the summer when they're not here, that's a whole nother ball game. And with our ice hockey program, we bring our team back for the summer and they train. With the field hockey program, when they go home for the summer, they go home with a training program, but it's, I don't see them for the next, 3 months until they come back. So whether they're doing it correctly, and you hope that by the time they leave campus that, you've ingrained habits and you've taught things well enough that they're going to go home and perform exercises correctly. But knowing that it is what it is and they're going to be on their own, again, that dictates a little bit of what you're going to do from a programming standpoint, because sure, I'm certainly not going to get as complex with the field hockey program in the summer because I'm not going to see them. Whereas with the ice hockey team, again, we can go further down that rabbit hole because they're actually on campus with me, and I don't have to worry about them doing something silly or not understanding what an exercise is that we've programmed or something like that.
So for the coaches, might be listening overseas or high school coaches or whatever, like they might not understand the regulations that you have to deal with on the NCAA level for what you can do in season and off season. Can you kind of scratch on that a little bit on the surface?
Yeah, so there's big time constraints that change depending on the season. Mm-hmm. In the off season, in the NCAA, for most sports, there's 8 hours allotted to athletically related activities, I believe is the terminology. Anything to do with the sport falls into that 8 hours. And it seems like 8 hours seems like a pretty good chunk of time, but when you think about that is going to be partially individual skill sessions with coaches. Some sports are going to be able to practice strength and conditioning. If the team is going to be doing, any team activities, if they're going to do volunteer work or things like that, those all fall into that. So that 8 hours in the off season can very quickly get whittled down to not a lot of time. Sure. If the program for whatever reason spends a lot of time doing those other things. In season, the amount of time you actually have with the student athletes from a training perspective is even less. In most sports, it's about 2 hours a week. So it really narrows down the window of actual training time that you get with the athletes.
So you're dealing with a limited time set. You're dealing with two different populations. You have educated athletes. You have uneducated athletes. By that I mean training age. So you're really kind of like all over the board with like who you're dealing with and how you're dealing with them, right?
Yeah, no question. Yeah. Very, very different populations.
Interesting. So, some other things that we saw when we were at your facility, you had like a really great, I would say like daily routine. Like Doug was like high-fiving me in the background when we saw the guys come in. I was kind of laughing because they put Adele on the stereo and everybody just kind of like chilled out for a little while. Yeah. But can you explain like what your day or your routine looks like when these guys first walk in the door from into actually getting up and warming up and working out?
Yeah, so we try to do a bunch of stuff before they even walk in the door from a monitoring and a readiness standpoint to have an idea of who they are when they walk in the door that day, because how they physiologically walk in on a Monday might be different than a Tuesday, and then on top of that, each individual is going to be different. So the first thing our athletes do every day is a subjective questionnaire before they come to the rink. We in season we have a block of time in the morning where we practice and train and we do everything. So the athletes have to be at the rink at 9 o'clock in the morning. So by 8:30, they have to have submitted their subjective questionnaire so that we can see that data and start to make decisions. When they walk in, we then do a heart rate variability test. So when you guys were laughing about Adele, it's because we're going to lay down for 5 minutes as a team and use our heart rate system to get HRV, and we don't want the Euro techno music going when we're trying to calm down and get a resting heart rate. So we throw on some relatively sort of low key music. Yeah. We lay down for 5 minutes and we get an HRV reading. So now we're looking at a couple different pieces of data before we either train that day or warm up and get on the ice to practice, or on a game day, same kind of thing. So that's the starting routine before we then even move into anything else. And we've added this summer, and I haven't fully gone through all the data to figure out what means what yet, but we've added some jump profiling to get an idea, hopefully, of CNS fatigue. And I want to try to build out some metrics to help to dictate a little bit more of what we're going to do on a daily basis based on some more of that information. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
So it's interesting. You're dealing with you're a pretty good sized school. You're a really good hockey program. You've got some budget, but you're not like spending a ton of dough on things. You mentioned capturing HRV, and you mentioned doing jump testing for CNS fatigue. So obviously, you're not using something like Omega Wave to capture both of those things.
Correct.
So you're just using your heart rate system for this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the CNS fatigue, you're looking at baselining information, looking for jump over time, or?
Yeah, so we're looking at contact time on a drop jump off of just the benches, the bench press bench.
Yep.
So all standardized height, and we have 6 platforms in our facility. We have 6 jump mats that'll give us contact time. And so we basically spent the summer doing that twice a week for 6 weeks to hopefully collect enough data to now be able to tease out, some thresholds and kind of know when their CNS is firing, when it's a little more sluggish. And we want to be able to compare and sort of collaborate with our other data points to come up with a bigger picture of where they are and what the appropriate stimulus may be that day, or if it's a good day to hit the gas pedal, or if this guy needs some aerobic work and just to relax, or whatever it may be, and just add some more context to the picture that we're looking at every day.
So you got 2 pretty solid fatigue numbers. What made you choose the drop jump over some of the other things like grip strength or jump height or whatever?
Yeah, partially logistically, we had jump mats already. so if I'm gonna be honest about it, so it's like, okay, well, we got at least some of the tools we want to use. My athletes are very familiar with doing lots of work with the jump mats. We test vertical jump and fore jump, and we just use them a lot anyways.
Yeah.
And we use them in training. So again, there's a familiarity piece of the puzzle to that.
Yep.
Also some work that a friend of mine, Daniel Martinez, has done in his master's program at Edith Cowan down in Australia, looking at reactive strength index, and he's essentially a volleyball strength and conditioning coach, and so he is very deep into jump metrics and understanding these things, and some of the work he's done is really kind of opened my eyes as far as using that contact time as an indicator of CNS fatigue versus just jump height.
Yep.
Because jump height can be dictated, or can be maintained even in the presence of fatigue by having access to force plates, which would be concrete sort of lines in the sand as far as how they're firing and what they look like on a daily basis.
No, I think you absolutely nailed it. The jump mechanics, like there's a couple of things. Obviously, understanding what a back to training age, like, do you understand exactly what the jump movement should be? We're going to do a counter movement jump or whatever, and I want you to be stable. I want your arms to swing and so on. You can cheat that stuff.
Right.
So it's I hear a lot of different ideas on all the pros and cons on why we do certain types of fatigue testing and things like that, and that one automatically sticks out as like, well, I can cheat a jump test, like I can drop my ass a little bit more when I go up or whatever it might be.
Yep.
So the mechanics get a little in the way, but I also read some of the things that they were doing with the volleyball team over there, and he was doing jumps into like reactive jump or a jump into an athletic movement, just a standard drop jump like off the mat, different things to look for other correlations. So like I think the jump into an athletic movement is very interesting because you can start getting into reaction time beyond just a landing or whatever it might be.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Sure. Yeah.
That's cool. So you've got your fatigue nailed down, right? Like you're doing subjective questionnaires. You've got heart rate variability coming in from your heart rate system, and you're looking at CNS fatigue. From your jump mat. What are you using for load variables?
So our heart rate system. Okay, we track the main data point we track off of that is TRIMP. So we get training impulse, and we wear the heart rate system in training. We wear it in practice and games. So from a loading standpoint, we look at TRIMP and we look at what we call intensity density, which is basically trim per minute.
Yep.
So we can evaluate essentially, and more so on ice than in lift. Regardless of what our training day looks like from a lifting standpoint, the trim variables don't alter too much.
Mm-hmm.
But on ice, we really use those metrics to evaluate the loading of a practice or of a game,
Yep.
and how they relate relative to any individual's sort of baseline, higher, lower, and we look at it as a team as well, and we'll plan as a staff. We will plan and alter our training week, our practice week, based on which days we have found we need to have higher loads or lower loads, or higher volumes or lower volumes, or whatever. And we've been able to, over the last few years, correlate a certain strategy from a weekly loading standpoint to a much higher winning percentage on the weekend. So we've kind of been able to nail it down that
Nice.
We go this length and this intensity on this day, and then over here we do it this way. And then when we kind of follow that script, we tend to not necessarily. I don't think that you can't ever say that that's why you win games or lose games. But what I think it ends up doing for us in our program is it gets us to practice at a certain tempo and with a certain mindset that is very conducive for how our program plays. So when we show up on Thursday before the weekend and we hit certain thresholds, that kind of means that we're practicing the way we want to play, and we're not just sort of having a light, walk-through type skate the day before, and then, Friday night we don't have any jump because we turn the system off on Thursday. So that's been the biggest thing from a loading standpoint that we're able to track and monitor.
How long did it take you to capture enough data to start really understanding that?
We probably halfway through the first year we were using a heart rate system, which now is probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
We started to really see some trends, or think we saw some trends. And when we kind of retrospectively went through the data and really kind of teased out some things, that's probably where we started to find out, or at least have a pretty good hunch that there was something there. Mm-hmm. And then probably by the end of that season, the picture really became pretty clear that paying close attention to those variables with the heart rate system could tell us a lot about what we needed to get done, and where our not only our conditioning levels towards the end of the season were, but from a long-term development perspective. And that's a big feature of our program at UMass Lowell is we take very seriously is sort of a 3-4 year process with our players and really developing players.
Yeah.
And we were able to kind of really start to tease those out after probably about a year. It probably took a good year to find that stuff.
That's pretty cool. And I mean, you're doing a lot with a heart rate monitor system. It seems like it's the most basic of monitoring techniques when you start getting into wearable devices, but it gives you a lot to actually use as a tool, right?
No question. Yeah, I mean, it's aside from just the raw data that that I pull out and look at every day, and we use to make those correlations and drive some decisions. From an education standpoint, the system itself is fantastic. Our players, they want to know how many calories they're burning. They want to know what their recovery between shifts. One of the first things our players do after games is come right over to my desk in the weight room. They want to see the heart rate system and see, well, how did I recover? I felt great in the first. I felt awful in the second. What did that look like? Oh yeah, that's what that looked like. And beyond that, it's been a great tool again to drive education on nutrition and hydration and things like this, and why different guys need to be doing different things from a conditioning standpoint or what have you. So it's been a really helpful tool.
So if you've been using this for 5 years, how would you say the acceptance of this stuff has happened with the student athletes as like new kids have come in? Because obviously younger kids are totally used to being interconnected with something. Has it gotten easier, or is it?
It's gotten easier. It wasn't. I don't want to say it was ever really tough with our athletes.
Okay.
There was a little bit of a sell at the beginning, and the college setting is, in some ways, is nice because if I say you have to wear it, mm-hmm. and my coach backs me up, which I'm very fortunate he does, then you have to wear it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. So from the start, there wasn't a lot of problem, but it has gotten easier over time. One, I think, again, the kids were coming in now. Some have even worn heart rate systems on their junior teams, or if they've competed on a national team, they may have worn one, or certainly familiar with wearing a personal one in training or things like that. And our culture at this point too has built to the point where this is what we do.
Yeah.
You put this on, you walk in, we lay down for 5 minutes, we do HRV, we do jump testing, it's just what we do. And whether it's they don't know any better, or now they've fully bought in, because now this is my 6th year here. We went from the year before, the staff came in and with our current coach, the team won 5 games, and now we're developing professional hockey players every year, and we've gone to the Hockey's Championship 4 out of 5 years, and so there's been success. And so I think when kids come in to our program now, they see a track record of success, and so it's just, I'm not sure what that is, but they're always really good, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And so it's a piece of the culture that's really made it very easy to get buy-in.
So you have survived like staff changes with the program still bleeding or still going through.
So I came with the new coaching staff.
Okay,
so
okay.
I've only worked for this head coach, Norm Bazin, the whole time. So
Got it,
been fortunate.
Yeah, it's interesting because we see it in, obviously there's the coaching tree mentality where a coach comes in, he brings his staff, he also brings his methodologies and technology and everything else like that with him. And, we've seen it happen where it does work, where you have a high-performance guy and he convinces the new staff that comes in, this is the way we do things and why we do it. And then we've seen it get completely blown up, too. So it's it's a interesting spot to be in when you're putting this type of thing in place. But if you can breed success, then you continue to build on it. You're in
Absolutely.
a good spot.
Yep.
So I was scrolling through your Twitter feed, and I saw a thing about regen days and cruising on the river.
Yeah. Well, so our arena is right on the Merrimack River.
Yeah.
It's a really nice part of town, and there's a river walk that runs. It's right outside our door,
Yeah.
and it walks right along the river. Past, we have a minor league baseball team just down the street, so it walks right past the ball field and down to some of the dorms. And it's actually just in the summer, it's a great little kind of nature walk almost, kind of in the city. And so on our regen days, on our Wednesdays in the summer, midweek, part of our program usually is just to go for essentially a little walk down the river and kind of relax and catch some sun, which hockey players don't get much of, and especially in New England. A little vitamin D and just be outside a little bit and a little we try to have a little pace on the walk, so there's a little bit of aerobic metabolism going on and kind of all those good things. And so that's one of the tools that we use that we have in our regen toolbox.
So do the athletes actually realize though that it's helping them, or do they just like, come on, man?
Well, they give me a lot of shit about it usually, but usually the next day, subjective questionnaire scores are better.
Yep.
Heart rate variability scores typically better.
Yep.
And just asking guys like, hey, how do you feel compared to the other day? Now, there's, is it the nature walk, or is it the mobility circuit we do, or is it just, hey, they can see the weekend coming up? Who knows?
Yeah.
But, when they complain about it, and then at the same time I can show them the data, and they know they feel better. We actually were going to skip one on our last week. It was kind of our last week. I was like, we'll just cut out early, and you guys have done a good job. And guys are like, we'll do it as a team. We'll just go for a walk. So, hey, you get a little buy-in. Now they're doing it on their own. So,
that's
placebo, I don't know, but it's whatever it is, it's working.
It's not as bad as cupping.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we'll start that next summer, to start cupping everybody.
Oh man, it's so funny because Phelps is out there and he's got the marks, and we're around this all the time, so we know what it is. But the media just ate that stuff up.
Yeah. Well, it's the last Olympics or whatever it was. It was the kinesio tape, and everybody had that going. And what's the new thing that the media can grab onto? And
I was kind of laughing. Somebody had one of the U.S. Long distance female runners had a right strip on, like the breathe rights.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, man, that's throwback now.
Right, yeah, that's like, that was like the first thing like 20 years ago. Yeah, it's coming full circle. Now it's back to the breathe rights.
Yeah, it's so funny because it just, but part of it's mental, and like you're saying, if you guys are doing the nature walk, and that is a physical as well as mental placebo effect, it actually has a real effect. I mean, what's going on in your brain is a real thing, and if that that feeling of I feel better because of this is actually part of the regen, then what the technique is doesn't matter as long as it's actually getting the athlete to do it.
Exactly. The what matters is that they feel better the next day.
Yeah.
How they get there doesn't matter.
Yeah. But then you'll see 100 new or 100,000 new cupping facilities open up over the next 2 years.
Sure.
So I mean, you're obviously watching the Olympics now, right? What are your thoughts on some of the performances that you've seen and things like that?
It's it's been incredible. I mean, Phelps, Bolt. I don't even know some of the names, but people are setting world records left and right. It's just, and I don't know if I'm sure there's data that people are going to find out about this, but it seems like there's more extraordinary performances. I mean, there always are at the Olympics, but it seems like there's more than ever this time around across the board in all different events, all different sports.
Athletes who shouldn't be like, who's the guy that won the decathlon yesterday? Damn, I can't think of his name. The Green, the last name, Ashton? The American guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I forget his name, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Like 3 people have done it ever,
right?
Where they've won it back to back. But it's like, well, it's common for. It seems more common for the extraordinary amount of things that are happening.
Exactly.
So is like you're saying, is there training technique? Is there something going on behind the scenes to support this? It's kind of funny though. So we actually walked in this morning and we were talking about medal counts and things like that, and obviously sports science is the big conversation here every day. And we look at the Australians, and it's like, well, how come their medal count sucks? And it's like, well, don't think about the medal count, think about the medal count per capita. And, the Australian guys have been in the top 10 to 15 for the past, 15 years or so. But there's also the counter argument that sport is sport, and doesn't matter per capita, doesn't matter whatever, it's scoreboard, and you just look at 100 plus medals for the U.S. right now compared to the next one down, which is like 50 something, and it's like, okay, so what's better, getting the best value out of your athletes or having a big pool of athletes to be able to choose from?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's you got to look at it per capita, because the reality is in a lot of sports, in a lot of places in the U.S., the reason we are dominant is because of our player pool.
Yeah.
Because we can break more people. I remember a strength coach friend of mine who shall remain unnamed for this quote, but works at a school in a program where they just flat out get the best athletes in their sport, in that sport. And he just flat out told me, he's like, listen, I understand the idea of reducing the chance of injury and being conservative, and that's the focus of training in a lot of places. I get that. He's like, that's not my reality. I put horsepower in the engine. That's it. If I break a horse, doesn't matter. We have another horse.
Yeah.
He's like, that's just my reality. Like, I can just do some freaky things because if I hurt 4 kids, it doesn't matter because we got 4 more kids that are just as talented.
Yeah.
But that's the U.S. system in general.
Yeah.
That's not the rest of the world. And so I think looking at things per capita and being able to see, who's able to do more with less, that's, to me, that's really that's the point. That's the point of what we're all trying to do.
Sure.
I was listening to a podcast the other day. Robbie Bork is a guy out of Ireland.
Yeah.
All things strength and wellness. And he's a friend of mine, and I don't remember exactly who he was talking to, but I remember him talking about when he did an internship over here in the States. He did an internship at Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning.
Yep.
And he was saying that there were other trainers, other strength coaches there, just average dudes that wanted to be coaches, who, based on some of their jump profiles, would be Olympic athletes in Ireland, because the player pool over here is just huge.
That much
the average guy over here is almost an Olympian in some places. So to see what countries like that can do when they utilize all of the available resources, sports science and good training and nutrition and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to me, that's way more valuable than just looking at, this country's got way more medals because they got way more people. It's and not to, hey, I'm American, I'm proud as anybody else, not to take anything away. It's exciting, but the reality is seeing what Australia can do with a population that's nowhere near ours.
No, it's 20. It's a great. There's medals by. Oh, what the hell is it called? Now I'm gonna have to look this up. Medalspercapita.com. So it's a great site. Like, you can go back, for the past however many Olympics, all the way back to Athens, and see, how have teams kind of how have countries kind of progressed through the ages.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that 2000 Olympics when Sydney in Australia kind of just like splashed this whole thing about sports science on the map.
Yeah.
And, like, shot straight up and then kind of hovered around that 15 spot since then is telling that this stuff actually works. But it's hard to ignore scoreboards. So then you get into team sport versus individual sports, and then you look at Bolt and Phelps, and everybody. Bolt last night in the 200, he's this far ahead of everybody else, and you've got literally 8 guys all in the same spot for second right now,
right,
running the same race,
right.
So you can see where maybe the science will get that separation from second and third and so on, but then you got genetics,
right?
And Bolt, like, you're just never gonna.
It's just Bolt, Phelps. They're not like those guys aren't human. Like, those are aliens. Sports science, it doesn't training. It doesn't matter. They're aliens. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I think what you do see is, like you said, in that other race for second, that's where now the 1% differences add up.
Oh yeah.
And for us in our program here, like, we're looking for marginal gains. We're looking for how many 1% differences can we find with our athletes in our program, and to me that's the value of sports science.
Yep.
Is being able to tease out, like, we do the subjective questionnaire thing every day. Does it drastically alter anything we do on any given day? No. A lot of times it doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
But sometimes it changes one little thing for one player, and that might mean one little difference that scores one more goal for us.
It's true.
And that's how tight it can be. Certainly for us in college hockey, it can come down to that. And so to me that's where the value lays.
Yeah, when we talk on the pro level to a lot of teams, and it's a hockey team, let's say you got 25 guys, and the top 5 are just your genetic skill guys that doesn't matter what you do, you can probably feed them beer and chips and they'll still do it.
Yeah.
Then you've got your 10 guys that you need to absolutely do those 1% incremental gains on, and then the bottom 5 just guys don't care.
It's not gonna matter.
Yeah.
They don't care. Yeah. Yeah. But you're right though. It's that those 10 guys, 15 guys in the middle.
Yeah.
You move that group up 1%, 2% over the course of 80 games.
Yeah.
That's a big change. That's a big difference.
Right.
If they're slightly less fatigued, Game 7 Stanley Cup Finals than the other team, that ends up being a big difference.
Yeah. No, it totally does. So in the Olympic side, like, what's your sport in the summer?
You know what? I like all the sports that you never see.
Yeah.
I enjoy track. I enjoy swimming. It's fun to watch those. But, like, watching handball, archery,
badminton. The badminton guys are
badminton's
insane.
Unbelievable. All that stuff. I do have to give a shout out to volleyball, indoor men's and women's. There's 3 athletes that I coached when I worked at Stanford. That
Nice,
2 on the
man.
men's side and 1 on the women's side that are on Team USA. So it's been fun watching them as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I enjoy seeing the sports. I like the velodrome, the
The bike.
track cycling
Yep.
is cool. Just you never see that, it's that stuff's really neat to see. So I like that.
Yeah, the sports that kind of come out of the work, and obviously the media attention in the States is based on, our ability to win the sports that are being shown. You go to other countries, and like you go to some Asia Pacific countries, and like the badminton's number one because
sure.
Domination.
Yeah.
It's interesting though that so you get some new sports like golf came in this year, and I'm watching the golf thing, and I'm just like, this doesn't feel very Olympic-y.
yeah. I got the same thing. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're gonna see baseball come back, I think.
Yeah, baseball and softball.
Yeah. So there's some things that watching for different sports. Like I love the throwers. I think the throwers are completely under shown. I don't know how else to describe that, but you see these guys and they're just massive, giant people. You take a shot put and throw it 50 feet and tell me just it's incredible what they do. So
no question.
There's some of that stuff that I really get into as well, where it's just like you just don't go and pick a shot put up, throw it, and tell me how far you get it. And
yeah, exactly.
These guys are chucking it.
Yep. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. So let's see what else I got on here. Like we were talking about CVAPs here as well. It was the last show that I did this summer, and I finally, we were talking about it, I finally got to do my honeymoon, so that's why we skipped the podcast. But what was anything that you took away from that you really liked?
CVAPs was awesome. I would say the biggest takeaway in general, nothing, specific, no specific information, but just the way the conference was run and the social side of it, where and I don't know if people are familiar, but you stay in the dorms, and for 2 nights you have cookout and beer, and it's just such a
everybody's happy with that except Buddy Morris.
Yeah. It's such a great environment. Like I can't speak highly enough about it. But from the actual presentation, I mean, every speaker had just some great stuff. Buddy Morris is, his depth of knowledge, and for as long as he's been doing it, at the level he's been doing it at, is just, and then his intensity is just impressive. Derek Hansen's always really good. His just conversation on sprint training, speed training, and how that applies in a team sports setting, I think was fantastic. Is fantastic. I've seen him speak a couple of times. Randy Ballard from Illinois, really, really good stuff.
Yeah.
Sam Code talked a lot about sports science stuff. All good things. All good things.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that Derek, he was up there presenting on STIM.
Yeah, the EMS stuff.
Yeah, and basically getting to a point where it's like, I don't even feel DOMS anymore. And it's like,
what? Yeah.
So one of our guys, Ethan, went out and he's like, hey, he's reached out to me. He's like, hey, I want to get a STIM unit, and he showed him like a very expensive STIM unit, but then he found a cheaper one and actually went through the protocol. And Ethan like texted me. He's like, dude, you gotta totally do this. It works.
Yeah.
And now I'm like really interested in figuring out like what the science is behind that.
Yeah, I am too, because that's another thing that I haven't personally toyed with at all.
Yeah.
But I've seen Derek talk twice now just this summer about the use of STIM and EMS, and we've had some conversations offline about it. And my original, when he first talked about it, my original question to him or sort of concern was that certainly I know in the NHL it's probably like this in other sports too, but there are some well-known groups of athletes or teams that essentially just do STIM. Like they don't train. They just, like, guys just slap on the unit, and to me that's just, that can't, I said this to Derek, I'm like, that can't be, like, you can't tell me that covers all of the bases, that everything that training is. It's not just, stimulation of individual muscles. And he was like, no, he's like, I completely agree with you. He's like, that's not how we use it at all.
That's how I work out.
It's almost,
just sit there and
just blow the eyes up. For us, that's perfect. Like, that's what I need while I sit here at work. But and that was one of the things that he talked about was really using it as a supplemental tool in conjunction with training, whether it be right along with, to hook somebody up to stim while they're going through training, squatting or whatever it might be, to facilitate some different adaptation, or sort of as an accessory, as a post-training tool to overload tissue, or even the regen and recovery use of the tool from a nervous system sort of management tool.
And I think that's where he hit it on, where I was sitting there and I'm just like, you're basically like a monkey watching a man create fire kind of thing. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It was very, very interesting. But, there's the same thing with, have you seen the Halo unit?
No, I've heard of it. I've not seen. Yeah.
So they were at MIT Sloan, and they're just going. They wrapped up their validation studies and all this other stuff, and same kind of thing, where the guy's basically saying, yeah, we're stimulating brainwave patterns to give you, central nervous system stimulation so that you can increase your gains, basically, right? Like, I'm going to go and squat, but I'm going to be able to squat 30% more because my neuromuscular system is primed because of this unit that's stimulating brainwave patterns. And it's like, again, a monkey, watching a man make fire. I'm sitting there going, wait, what?
Yeah.
It's really incredible, like some of the things that they've got going on. And it was kind of funny. I'm watching the Olympics and I see all these guys with their Beats headphones on, and I'm trying to see if any of them had like Halo units on.
Well, and that would be my question to any of that type of stuff is, assuming what you're telling us is true, and that you're getting these greater stimulus, in the actual training, that's fantastic. But when you don't use the tool and then you go compete, does that effect carry over, or is it something that's only there when you're using that? And I have no idea. I don't know the answer to that, but that would always be my question is, it's like doing complex training. Okay, like you're increasing your vertical jump right now, right here. That's great if that's all we care about. But does that increase in power output transfer, tomorrow? Or does, I don't know. I don't know the answer to those things. There's certainly things that we do and we try to take advantage of, but I'm not sure that I'm not sure anybody really has those answers, at least at this point.
No, a lot of it's so early, like, what they're getting into, but that's the fun of being in this space, is that, you're constantly just like exposed to what seems to be rocket science, and it'll take, a couple of years before people actually catch on and start using it in wide usage. But, I think that the technology is evolving so fast, and the acceptance that it's going to help has opened up. Although you get like, there was an article that came out, and the Seahawks head coach is like, yeah, hey, our GPS units numbers are off the charts this year, so my guys are highly trained. I can tell right away. And Sherman goes, yeah, I'm not wearing that thing. It's like, I don't want them knowing, I don't want them peeking behind the scenes on what's actually going on. So it's like you get some of these guys who are just like, nope, we'll never do it. But if you can show that, like, you feel DOMS, right? You feel fatigue. And if I put this thing on you, you don't feel that anymore, that should be accepted. You know that you're getting better, you know what your PR is when you hit the rack. And if I can put this headphone thing on and I can lift a little bit more, like, I can actually feel that and see that. So there's that feedback that you're giving athletes when they're actually in the training room and in the weight room that I think helps accept the technology. Yeah, well, no question. I think immediate feedback to the athlete is huge. We do a little bit of velocity based training here too, and
the biggest benefit to those tools to me is not the nitty gritty science stuff that we like, as far as, what's the right, meters per second for this adaptation or that adaptation. It's the athletes being able to see how fast they're moving. Instead of me telling them, hey, you got to move the bar faster, they're seeing it. They know exactly what it is. Yeah. And using that as a competitive tool, our athletes compete with each other. They compete with them to a higher degree, which means they get much more output and much more benefit out of whatever exercise it is that we're doing, just because they're getting that feedback. And it's the same with any of the sports science stuff. I think where coaches can go wrong is sort of keeping everything behind a curtain, and not allowing athletes to see what you're collecting. Or again, I think the education is huge, and being able to educate them as to what this stuff actually means. And to that whole deal with the Seahawks and Sherman, and I get it, and the NFL, and there's some different stuff going on, and there's money involved. But there's a trust piece of this too, where even here at our level, and again, they basically have to do what I say, but that doesn't mean they have to try that hard when they do it. So I still have to sell things to them. The more they understand, the more they learn, the more I educate them about why it is we're doing these things and how this can help them, the more trust then they have in me and in these tools. And now they're not, and we've had this. I've had this with athletes where, I have to build a relationship to the point with them that they trust me, that because they have reported a poor subjective score today, that does not mean that they are not going to play. Or that does not mean that I'm running to the head coach to say, hey, like, this guy, he was out all night, like, he needs this, this punishment or X, Y, or Z. But it takes trust and it takes education to get to those points.
So, I mean, you hit a great point where you're using a VBT system that's actually giving you the feedback live while you're doing it. I see so many tech companies roll out with, some unit that doesn't give you that feedback, and immediately, like, buy-in just drops right off.
Yeah,
you guys don't care.
Yeah. No, because the reality is even the guys that love being in the weight room, they don't want to be monkeying around with stuff that takes extra time. They want to go, they want to do their stuff, and they want to go.
Yeah.
If they have to monkey around with a tool that now doesn't even really give them anything, no buy-in. They're not going to want to do it. So having that feedback is crucial from a buy-in standpoint. And again, I think that's the biggest, for us at least, that's been the biggest benefit to whether it be the VBT, whether it be the heart rate system, is them being able to get the feedback and understand better what's going on with them. And then I always try to relate everything to what are one of the first things we do with our athletes when they come in is we do personal goal setting. Like, what do you want to do? Where do you want to get to?
Yeah.
I can tell you what we need and what we want from you in our program, but in year 1 and year 2 and year 3 and year 4, what do you want to improve upon? Where do you want to get to? They all want to play in the NHL, but let's be specific about, where do you want to get to? Okay, now let me show you how these tools help you achieve your goals.
Do you do that beyond physical and actually get into like life goal setting and personal, I want to be a better listener, I want to
No.
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 It's just pure numbers.
Not my realm. Yeah, it's not with me. It's all performance based, and I mean we've had guys that have come in and they're like, listen, I'm not going to play in the NHL. Like, I want to be a doctor, so I know I need to do some other things, and that's cool, and those are separate conversations. We definitely do that, but no, I mean I'm talking we go through a smart goal setting.
Sure.
Set up, and I sit down with every player and sort of the coaches, and we talk about what are your goals individually, what are your team goals on the ice, what can we do in here to help you achieve those. So I want you to set goals in here. I want to hang clean this much by the end of this year, whatever. Yeah. But I try to get them to go beyond that. Okay, but relate what we're doing in here to on the ice, because just lifting more weight in here, I mean, it's great for my ego, I guess, but that doesn't necessarily make you a better hockey player. Like, tell me what's going to make you a better hockey player. Do you need to get faster? Okay, how can we measure that? All right, we can look at 10-yard. We can look at power output with our jumps. We can do X, Y, and Z. Let's set some goals, some smaller goals based around your larger goal of getting faster. And now we can look at those things. And now when we look at heart rate response, it's not just, okay, that's great. That's what my heart rate did. No, now we can look at it and say, okay, when we were doing speed work, we weren't recovering to a heart rate zone that was low enough for you to be fully recovered. So you couldn't have gotten faster today because we didn't take care of that detail or something like that. So now it becomes very, all of the data becomes very individual to them. It's not just general stuff, but it's based on what they're trying to get better at.
So when you got an athlete who has just walked into the door, you have to explain to him what a heart rate recovery number might be. He has to know, okay, my I'm not sure what you're using, percentages or numbers, whatever it might be, but like I want to improve in this thing. So then how are you communicating like the effectiveness of the training to these guys? Like, we're in a very specific training block and this is going to get us this goal, and I know that you want to be a more efficient skater, but right now we're in hypertrophy, right now we're in whatever. So how do you communicate the differences in the training that you're doing compared to the overall long-term goals that they're trying to set?
Yeah, well, we try to talk as a group every single day before we start about what exactly we're trying to achieve today, how that puzzle piece fits into the larger puzzle. Exactly like you said, okay, yours is this. I'm trying to explain to you that we need to take these steps to get to that point. We're all down on this step. Mm-hmm. So I know you want to do that, but we got to do this better. And so it's an education process. I'm huge on education and teaching them why we're doing what we're doing, and as a specific example, like in our pre-lift, so I think you guys were here in season, so you probably didn't see a lot of our pre-lift stuff, but in the off season, we go through about 40 minutes of work before we even touch a weight. We're doing all our speed work or our agility work, plyometrics, med ball, sled, all of that stuff is going to happen before we strength train.
Yep.
And that's all based on heart rate recovery. So we put our heart rate system up on the TV.
So you can actually see it live.
So they see it live.
Yeah.
And based on where we are in the program, what phase we're in, what we're trying to achieve from an energy system standpoint, they have to wait until they recover to certain thresholds. So if we're in a very alactic aerobic, early off season, very alactic aerobic, high power outputs, full recoveries, they have to get below 60% heart rate before they can go from hurdle jump to med ball throw, for instance.
Yep.
Or in between 10-yard sprints, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Later in the summer, when we get more into a capacity phase, that threshold might be moved up to 70%. So now they have to perform exercise, perform power output in the presence of fatigue. But educating them as to why they early in the off season, hey, I want you to sit down and wait. And you're not just going one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. You need to sit down and wait until that color turns to whatever, gray.
Sure.
And this is why. Because if we get this, if we develop this quality, then we can develop that quality. We develop that quality. Now, remember how you said you wanted to be faster? Now we're actually going to be faster. We're not just doing work for work's sake, but we're actually improving the specific pieces that you told me are the things that you want to improve upon. And again, it goes back to that education process, which drives buy-in, which drives trust, which ultimately, big picture, builds culture. And now, again, now my seniors are telling freshmen to sit down in between reps. Nice. Because this is what we do. I can sit behind my desk and not do anything if things are going well. I call it the self-cleaning oven. If the program is going well, then in all reality, I can sit back here and I could just be on Facebook all day, and my leadership, it'll run itself. The program will run, and they'll do what they're supposed to do, and they'll do it right. And they'll do it. That's where you try to get to, but it's a building process.
So, give me one thing that we like to talk about is the actual technique. So you're going to educate an athlete What type of terminology are you telling a guy like, hey, we're going to build a house and the foundation needs to be here first, or something like that? Like, what types of things do you use as far as cues go to help educate them and understand why you're doing foundational elements or why you're doing specific training type of first?
Yeah, I think I try to speak the language, right? I try to speak hockey, and I was a hockey player, so it's easy for me.
Sure.
But I try to relate things in the terms that matter to them. I try to, if they again go back to the example, I want to be a faster skater. Well, which hockey player, which NHL player right now do you want to look like? Do you want to be Patrick Kane, or do you want to be, whoever?
Ovechkin, yeah.
Yeah, like what are you trying to achieve?
Both have speed, but have different ways of getting there.
Exactly. So using examples like that, and then those are the big. I really think it's speaking to the athlete in their terminology. Same thing with field hockey. I try to watch field hockey. I try to learn. I never played a game of field hockey in my life. I barely understand the rules. But if I can talk to them about, in their terminology. Again, we might be doing the same thing that the ice hockey team did that day. Maybe we're both doing 10-yard sprints, but I'm going to talk to them about why it matters for them a little bit different than I'm going to talk to or relate it to the hockey guys. Because the hockey guys, well, we don't run on land, so how does this translate? So I got to talk to them differently. Field hockey, well, obviously this is much more directly applicable to what you're doing. So it comes down to trying to speak the language of the athlete, I think.
Oh, that's great. That's definitely a great tip. Well, believe it or not, an hour flies by that fast.
Yeah, that's a good chat. Talk shop. We go all day, man. Go all day.
That's the best part about this. Like I try to keep it as light as possible because I don't know, if you go into a format, it just dies. You gotta just let the conversation happen naturally. Yeah. So, sure. I definitely appreciate it. Anything you want to add before we roll off here? Contact information, like if anybody wants to reach out to you on Twitter or email or anything else like that, or if they want to call your cell phone and...
Yeah. Let me give you my wife's phone number. That'd go over really well. No, Twitter, at DMcConnell29. I'm on Twitter quite a bit. Yep. You can email me, dmcconnell29@gmail is my email. Feel free if anybody wants to reach out, and I'm happy to chat. I always like talking shop, so yeah. Hit me up or shoot me a message on Twitter, or follow me, or respond to something I say, and
sure,
argue with me if you want, or whatever.
Like a good Twitter fight.
Yeah, exactly.
So. Cool, man. Well, thank you again, Devan, and good luck this season. It's coming up quick, man. Summer's almost over.
Barely catch my breath, and we're back at it. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much. This was the Coach Me Plus podcast. We'll get all the extra stuff.
All right, and that wraps it up for episode number 6 of the Coach Me Plus Applied Sports Science podcast. Thanks to Coach Devan McConnell for being on. He was awesome. Some great stuff in there, about dealing with the realities of being a coach and multiple teams, and how you get to work with guys when you're able to deal with them in person, remotely, and so on. I love the stuff about his regen. It's like just shut down and chill out for the day and actually go walk around the river and enjoy time. Good stuff in there. So look for us again in about 2 weeks for the next podcast. You can subscribe using your app, whatever, iTunes or Stitcher or whatever it is that you're using. And of course, go to CoachMePlus.com. Click the subscribe link in the top right corner and subscribe to our Applied Sports Science newsletter. It's good information. We don't try and sell anything or spam you with stuff. It's really all about what's happening in the industry, news, updates, and of course, the latest in white papers and research. Thanks again, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.